Hello, this is Old Man Jehu, where I talk about news, culture, and Bible prophecy. So it seems like same-sex marriage is going to be challenged in the Supreme. People are trying to get same-sex marriage challenged in the Supreme Court, and it's going to probably go the. It seems like it's going to end up going, and if it does get challenged, it might end up going the same way that abortion did when it comes to Roe versus Wade, where it just gets kicked back to the states. Okay, now from my understanding of it, it was like the ruling was just made it so same-sex marriage got recognized by made it so every state had to recognize same-sex marriage before marriage equality. But this is not same-sex marriage is not about marriage equality, because here's the thing: the argument that they propose in a lot of cases, and you still hear this argument now, is the whole love is love. Right? If they love each other, why can't they get married? Okay. If they're two consenting adults and if they love each other, why can't they get married? Okay. Let's go with that. If they're two consenting adults, they should be able to get married and they shouldn't be able to get scrutinized. So why don't we have that same energy when it comes to familial bonds, family bonds? Like if a consenting adult cousins or consenting adults, brother, sister, father, daughter, uncle, niece, stuff like that. Why? I mean, we're talking about adults here. Don't miss that part. We're talking about adults here. I have to say it like that because whenever I talk to people, they miss when I say adults. We're talking about adults. This conversation, because adults are the only one who can get married. I have to say it like that. You're going to find when you talk to the normal people, they're going to miss the adult part. When we're talking about, if you're talking about two consenting adults should be able to get married, then that means the brother and sister in all those relationships, they should be able to get married too, according to that logic, not according to what I think is right. This has nothing to do with that. We're just being consistent with that train of thought. If you think that if you think that same-sex couples should be recognized by the government as marriage, then why shouldn't those? That's not marriage equality if it doesn't recognize those. Like I was just recently looking up cousin marriages in like when I saw this, and I was just like, and I saw that cousin marriages, like first cousin marriages, aren't recognized everywhere in the country. Some places do, and some places don't. And I think in Texas and one other state it's criminalized. Why can you criminalize that, and but not homosexuality? Why is it either? Why? I think this has something to do with how we're conditioned, because we're conditioned to accept. We've been conditioned to accept same-sex attraction. I mean, same-sex couples since the '90s through Hollywood, because Hollywood has been conditioning us in this way. And I think they could end up conditioning us to accept incestuous relationships if they had kept going with took that and kept going from the series Game of Thrones, because people were more sympathetic to the people were very sympathetic to that relationship, that incestuous relationship in Game of Thrones. They were very sympathetic, so I think Hollywood could have pushed the needle when it came to that too. They just decided not to. Now, normally when it comes to incestuous relationships in movies, I've never seen any incestuous relationship that the people were represented as a good character. Now people say that sexuality has nothing to do with character, but why 100% of the time, where like brother and sister are relations, they're presented with bad character. If you really believe that, they don't really believe that. They don't really believe love is love. They don't really believe that. And that's my point in bringing this up. This is not about equality. This is about special pleading. And a lot of these people who be saying, well, same-sex couples to do what they want to, have a problem with age gap relationships. And I'm talking about age gap relationship between two consenting adults. We're not talking about age gap relationships between somebody who's not an adult and who is an adult. That's wrong. Okay, I get that. Now, I mean, things might be like between a 17 and 18-year-old. Okay, we understand, like that's not the same kind of thing as a 16-year-old and a 45-year-old. We know those are not the same. Okay, we know that. Or a 16-year-old and an 18-year-old is not the same as a 16-year-old and a 45-year-old. We know this is not the same. Okay? Now, but to say that a 22-year-old adult who can sign up for the military, to put his life on the line in the military, who can be a cop and, organize, like, conduct, like, and be in a place where he can govern other adults that are much older than him. They can mutilate themselves permanently through trans operations, and they can actually raise, like, be responsible for a whole nother human being as far as adopting and bringing kids from the earth through the earth. Can't date somebody much older. It's slow to me, but y'all say that that's wrong. Like, they don't, like, these people really don't believe that. They just use these concepts to maneuver what they want in there, and then after that they stigmatize other things they don't like, just like they accuse you of doing to them. Oh, the reason why homosexuals are depressed because people stigmatize them. So then why don't y'all have that same energy when it comes to those kind of incestuous relationships, which I don't agree with. I don't agree that the Bible clearly says that's wrong, outside of certain genetic defects you have when you have those kind of relationships that have kids. But what if the person doesn't want to have kids? Then what? Then what do you have to say about that? Because I know in some of these places, when you look up cousin marriages, they're like, they give certain exemptions, and they say, well, you can't have kids. You can only have kids if you can only get married if you have a genetic counselor. Why would they need a genetic counselor if love is love? Like, when you throw same-sex marriage into the pot, you're making marriage no longer about procreation, which is why laws against cousins and brothers and sisters or stuff like that was there in the first place. Which is why you have laws, about concerning alimony are there in the first place, and which is why you have tax incentives for it in the first place. There's no need to have tax incentives for just a romantic relationship. Other countries are asking people to get married for procreation purposes. They're pleading with to people to get married in their country for procreation purposes, not because they just want people to be together. Places like Russia and Japan and South Korea, they want marriage not because they just want people to be romantically attracted to each other, but because they want to grow their population. Because inherently, we know that a major aspect of marriage is about procreation. I'm not saying marriage is not a marriage if you don't procreate. That's not what I'm saying. But it is a huge fundamental factor to it, which is why you would ban cousin marriage or sibling marriage. This is why I think it's about hypocrisy. And this is, in one of the articles I read one of the articles I was reading it was from ABC, and it was talking about how Republicans are losing. It's losing support amongst Republicans. It went from 41%, from 55% to 41 at its height to like 41% now, and it's stagnating at 70%, which it went up from around 50% in 2015, 10 years ago, when they had the Supreme Court ruling when it comes to same-sex marriage. So, yeah, there is no marriage equality. Even now, there is no marriage. If you think two consenting adults should be able to get married and it should be recognized everywhere, that's not, there's no marriage equality there. There just isn't. This is about special pleading. That's what it is. Because same-sex marriage has nothing to do with procreation. This is what I'm saying is not a moral argument here. This is not a moral argument against anything. This is not. I did bring up the Bible as far as, but this is what I'm saying is just a legal argument. It's just a principle argument. Well, it's not a moral argument from a Christian's perspective. This is just saying, if your principle is these people should do this, this is the criteria, then these other things that fit that same criteria, whether you consider it the same kind of thing or different, should also be allowed. And this is not the case. And this is why I think there's a lot of hypocrisy when it comes to this. And since this movement is losing a lot of sympathy because they been pushing a lot of their stuff on kids, and you have the Supreme Court justices there that might overturn it, this might be something that happens in the United States. It gets pushed back down to the states, and certain states are going to keep it recognized and certain states aren't. Just like certain states recognize cousin marriages and certain states don't. All right? So those are just my thoughts on it. I don't really want to get too much into it because it's to make the video a lot longer than I want it to be. But anyways, that's really all I have to say about this. Thanks for your time. Thanks for watching, and have a good day. Peace.